From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grill room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. I hope that you and yours are sheltering in place in a comfortable environment, and we look forward to greeting you back in our grill room just as soon as conditions permit. Our speaker today was an intellectual property lawyer before she crossed over to the entrepreneur side and founded a company called Sail to Shelter. It is a fascinating company with a great mission, and she's a fascinating founder. So welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, Angela Abshier. Angela, you were an intellectual property lawyer turned entrepreneur. What made you kind of want to switch away from a great profession, my daughter is a successful young lawyer, to found a company?
Thanks for having me, Ron. I'm so happy to be here today. So first of all, let me thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think, honestly, Ron, that I was probably more creative than I was smart. And I think that I was driven to intellectual property because, frankly, when Napster happened to the world, and it was all of a sudden possible for us to just rip off music, it was a bit outrageous to me. And I'm such a believer in art and music as part of our culture that I felt like this is, we got to get in front of this. And it sort of walked me into this idea that there are all of these incredible ideas, and we have to figure out how to monetize them and protect them, right? And then there's that balance between science and art, and what do we give back to culture, and what do we preserve and protect and defend, and what can we monetize and commercialize, and what should we give away? So that's sort of how I ended up pursuing intellectual property.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about Sail to Shelter.
Sail to Shelter is a perfect example of what happens when sort of these two disciplines in my life collided. I was working in sustainable fashion on a secondary marketplace for dead stock material.
Wait, what's dead stock material?
Meaning that the fashion industry has had this dirty little secret that there would be material that would be made that wouldn't meet certain specifications, whether marketing or they had flaws in them. And so the practice has been for all of time, we'll just roll that up and put it in a warehouse somewhere to the tune of $120 billion worth of material. So this was where I was in my life when I stepped onto a sailboat for the first time. And I stepped onto a sailboat in a race, right? So I've still not been on a cruising sail for fun. I have raced a FAR 40 and a J70, and that's it. And so as I'm in my work mode of thinking, what are we going to do with all of this extra material? I'm standing on this boat with all of this incredibly powerful material. And I'm thinking, where's this dead stock? What kind of dead stock is there in sail material and sailcloth material? And then as I sailed more, it was also sort of, well, what about these sails, right? We don't use them all, but they don't all seem to be trashed. And the more elite of a racing team that you join, the more you realize that there are some pretty decent sails that don't have much of a second life. And I just thought it kind of makes sense to figure out how to maximize their strength and durability and turn them into something that could help people. So that was sort of all in my mind. And then the pandemic hit, and I was living in downtown Los Angeles in a loft, frankly, Ron, right above Skid Row. And it changed my life forever. It was not the kind of interaction with homeless communities that you get to drive through. It's the kind that you have to look at every day, right? I was just watching. And then when the pandemic hit, there was this, we sort of watched it from the East Coast move west. And all I could think is every one of those people are going to die, right? We don't have any way to protect them. And the only thing we knew about the pandemic was that people had to shelter in place. And so it really just sort of crushed me. And more than anything, I thought, we have all of this incredible material. We could do something to help.
So for those who don't know, the material used for sails has evolved in the last 100 years. Cotton back in the 30s gave way to Dacron in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then beginning in the middle 70s and on into the 80s, Mylar got laminated with different materials, including Kevlar and ultimately Spectra. And after our Build Coat campaign in the 90s, carbon fiber sails came along. And the purpose of all these evolutionary changes in material was to cause the material to last longer and to not stretch so it would lose its shape. And you're saying one of the byproducts of this evolution of sail material to be more resilient and stronger and longer lasting is that, holy cow, when you're done with an old cotton sail, it was biodegradable and it was torn apart. But when you're done with a brand new, Spectra Mylar laminate sail, that material could last for hundreds of years. And so it occurred to you that maybe there's a secondary market that could be ecologically beneficial for the world if I could figure out how to use this long-lasting material after sailors want to discard it. If I got it?
You got it. You got it. And that's what our mission is. It is to upcycle retired Grand Prix and elite racing sails and to transform them into shade and shelter for humanitarian aid around the world. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Wonderful story. Tell us all about it.
Well, like I said, in 2018, I started racing FAR 40s. In 2019, I raced in the FAR 40 Worlds. I started racing a J70. Sail to Shelter was born when I started thinking surely we could make more than bags out of this, right? I mean, we all need a great sail bag, but at some point we've all got a great sail bag and we still have shipping containers full of really good sails. This photograph was taken in the FAR 40 Worlds. This is on a bar named Katana. And I mean, you're never going to see a picture of me happier than this, right? I mean, it's just, I love sailing. I was having the time of my life. I'm not a great sailor and I haven't sailed much, but I absolutely fell in love with the beauty of it, with the competition, with the camaraderie. It's like a dance. I mean, everything about it. I fell in love with it, indicated there by my super happy face. So Sail to Shelter was born in 2020 when the idea was actually it started as a bag that had a tent under it, like that it had a hidden tent. We were going to make it all out of sail material. The bag was going to be out of mainsails and the tent would be made out of spinnakers and it would pull out from the bottom like a golf bag. And this was sort of the direction that we were going. And it's been a side gig. It's always just been something that I've sort of kicked down the road thinking I've got to find a solution for all these sails because it became something that I couldn't quite, it was like at some point I couldn't sleep. I was like, why do we not want to fix this problem? And so I was just relentless in my pursuit of partnership and understanding. More than anything, Ron, it was why am I the only person who seems to be thinking that we could do so much more with these sails? So I contacted an architecture firm in Los Angeles called CoArcs. I sent a cold email during the lockdown of the pandemic, and it turns out that one of the principals over at CoArcs in LA was a racer of a TP52, and he thought, you know what, let's give that a go. And if it weren't for him, I'm not sure where we would be. We had a number of design charrettes. We played around with some different possibilities, some industrial design. And then in 2021, I was connected with Dimension Polyant. I was really looking through the sailing industry for who is leading the charge with making this sport more sustainable. Who are the people who it's in their blood to do better? And I found Ken Madsen from Dimension Polyant. And I will discuss Ken further in the presentation and that relationship, but this is just sort of how we've gotten to, to where we are today. So the question is, why now? Why are we doing this now? Why am I pushing hard now to create more than a duffel bag or even a shelter bag? And the reason is because the need is greater than it's ever been. Sails are living and dying all around the world in shipping containers, and Sail to Shelter is here to use that waste to meet the growing demands of humanitarian aid around the world. I did not have luck helping local communities in the United States. And there was a point for me where I had to decide that it's more important to me that we use the sails than I go and try to figure out how to crack the politics and policy around homelessness in the United States. I wanted to find a really good customer or a really good purpose. And so I went to World Central Kitchen, who I knew was doing great work around the world. And I asked them if we could help them with standing up their needs to protect and feed people. That is how we got where we are today. I have collected partners. It started with the Ullman Newport Loft. Bruce Cooper and Lori Vasquez were tremendous supporters of mine from the very beginning. They held the first sale drive. I still have dead stock from that loft and that pickup that I'm using with different fashion designers and even small consumer goods and gear projects. CoArchitects, like I said, has put teams of architects into the thinking around what we can actually do with these things. Dimension Polyant, we all know Dimension Polyant as a leader in sailcloth manufacture. Kenneth Madsen from Dimension Polyant has been incredibly supportive. Arup is a global engineering company that has been involved in our design charrettes and is helping us with incredible ideas, industrial design ideas, and how to use sails.
So you said design charrettes. So are you holding kind of creative sessions with partners to examine how they can help your cause?
Absolutely. We just had one in April. There were 8 architects, 4 engineers, 3 master sailmakers, president of Dimension Polyant. I mean, we were all over the world, and designers had created designs for that we would put up on the screen, and then everybody would talk about it. Will that design work? Is there any way that we can make that better? How can we structurally support that? What is the need from the humanitarian aid organization? How can we, which pieces, which sail, which material? I mean, we went through hours and hours and hours of design concepts.
So what I'm hearing in your idea here is that you're hunting for industrial applications of used sail material, and you're going afield as broadly as you can to find other ways to use what would otherwise be thrown away ex-sailcloth, former sailcloth.
Correct. In temporary situations, some of these uses are temporary solutions in areas that have either experienced war or have experienced extreme climate. People are dying because there's no shade, and we can actually create that for them and protect them on a short-term basis. And short-term can be 5 years, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that. I'm not trying to replace this as a long-term permanent building solution. My argument is that this sailcloth is no different than corrugated tin or corrugated plastic when you think of it as a temporary but very stable material.
Robbie Doyle, you're dealing with Doyle Sails too?
So I'm dealing with Emma, the COO over at Doyle. They've all been terrific. Actually, 11th Hour has been terrific. I mean, I think what's important is that there's been so much support from inside the industry and so much multidisciplinary support from outside the sailing industry, which has been, I mean, the construction company in Sacramento, who's going to help us build one of our refugee camps, was also a sailor. Right. So when you get the right person and you tell the story and suddenly the picture makes sense, this same thing happened with Offshore Rigging Services. They contacted me because they heard about us and they want to contribute rigging. And so they've packaged up, there's a huge pallet full of end of life rigging that is on its way to Ukraine, frankly. So here's CoArchitects, one of the charrettes that you mentioned. We took in a sail. This was a 40-foot sloop mainsail that was sent to us by Dimension Polyant that was in excellent condition. I took it to the design charrette in Los Angeles. We rolled it all the way out that door right there. The architects were beside themselves with excitement. For this particular charrette, we were working with World Central Kitchen on what they call a resilience program. Part of the World Central Kitchen initiative is to leave behind an area that will include civic needs and safety and health. And so sometimes World Central Kitchen goes to areas where there's nothing standing. That's the reason that I went to World Central Kitchen, because I believe that we have solutions that will allow them to stand something up quickly and in a real stable way, right? Better than what they're using now. And then Russia invaded Ukraine. And what you're looking at here is, this is 44 mainsails right here. This gray building that you're looking at is the building that we all became familiar with when World Central Kitchen went to Poland to feed all of those refugees that were this mass exodus from Ukraine. Immediately, they needed shade as a staging area. They were receiving so many goods that they couldn't protect them all. They needed something that was big enough that they could drive a truck under and just protect some of these things from the elements. They sent us their Google coordinates. The architects and engineers got to work on a solution. We provided the solution to them, and then Doyle Sales ships sales from anywhere in the world to create this. This is what we're building in, this is a co-architect's design also for single family housing and other uses, just maximizing the shape of a sail and accounting for fluff. So these will be built in the next 3 weeks, actually. We'll have our first of these. I have to bring up Dimension Polyant. This is Ken Madsen on my, I don't know which side that, on my right side, if you're looking at it, and Taylor North on the left side of me. And that roll of material is dead stock sail material. We are standing in the factory in Putnam, Connecticut. And that particular piece of material became a grommeted tent structure that we created with Doyle Sails and shipped to Ukraine with Save Our Allies. Arup is a world-renowned engineering firm, and we're working with them on things like elastic grid structures and how to stand up and how to sometimes just drape a sail, a very large sail over elastic grid structures, and what kind of protection we can get from things like that. Industry support continues through Doyle Sales, who contacted me in January when they found out about Sail to Shelter and just wanted to figure out how to help us. And the biggest help that they can provide is they know where these amazing sails are in the world, and they're helping us get them. So right now we're working on a project with the International Rescue Committee in Sacramento. And in order to build and construct all of the things that they need at that farm, Doyle is finding us all of the sails and shipping them to Sacramento. In Sacramento, we have a construction partner with Sundt Construction. They will be helping us. It's still a bit of R&D and a bit of workshop, right? We're still in this ideation phase in that we have lots and lots of designs, but now we need to start building them, right? We need to start, every sail is different, and we need to make sure that our designs and our frame structures, to the extent that we're providing them, can be scaled, right? That we can have a single set of instructions that accounts for all of the differences in sails. And that's what we'll be working on with Sundt. Also contacted by a rigging company, Offshore Rigging in Spain. They are helping with, rigging. There are miles and miles and miles and miles of this material that doesn't have a home right now. And when you tell humanitarian aid organizations that they can have a lifetime supply of an endless supply of rope, they're pretty excited about that. So we're working with, I talk about offshore rigging because I really want to illustrate that the sailing industry is actually really supportive of this. The sailing industry is sort of turning around thinking, wow, we can do more than bags with this, and we should, right? So we're really lucky to have that. And then some of the aid organizations that we're really, really, really so proud to be working with. World Central Kitchen, obviously, I don't think there's a better partner there than them, just because of the scale of the work that they're doing in the world. One of the things that I really love about the Sail to Shelter model is the idea, Ron, is that the sails are living in places in the world already. In a further effort to reduce the environmental impact of this operation, we want to use sails as close to the impacted area as possible. For example, when the storm happened in Tonga in January, we were looking for sails in New Zealand and in that area, right? The idea is, let's have global partners, let's have a global inventory and understand where these sails are, which we're getting at. And then when we need them, we know where to go to get them, and then have them shipped much closer, right? And sometimes they're very close to the areas that need them. So World Central Kitchen, we've talked about, we know that they are really operating everywhere. In fact, just this week, they contacted me about helping them with industrial shade at the Texas-Mexico border. So we're working on that right now as well. Farm from a Box is a unique company that ships a shipping container that allows you to grow 6 to 10 acre farm. They send you everything you need in that shipping container, and you get to rebuild communities, right? Create revenue streams. It's an incredible organization that I was fortunate enough to be connected with, and they are working with the International Rescue Committee, and that team is interested in us testing some sales as farm material and farming equipment. We're building a 30-foot tall by 80-foot long high tower. We're building hoop houses, using sail material to test opacity, to understand if things can grow under them, what size and color of sail works for these types of applications. So that's a really exciting opportunity. And then further with the International Rescue Committee, which is rescue.org, the idea is if we can prove our designs and establish a process to stand up refugee camps using sail material, then they are a really good customer, because they need them all over the world, and they need them in places where there's nothing. So we're really optimistic and excited about what's happening in Sacramento, because in the next few weeks it'll turn into a little workshop out there. And we're going to test up all of these designs. Another really amazing partner has been Solidarity Engineering. This is an organization that started in 2019. They are just boots on the ground to build things when all of this shows up. One of our issues working with humanitarian aid organizations is who's going to build it when it gets there, and how scrappy is that? You know, who are the people? What access do they have to equipment? I mean, some of these areas don't have equipment, right? Some of these areas have been annihilated, literally. You know, those are logistic problems. And so this team is actually boots on the ground in some of these different areas, and they're helping us to actually build. The other thing that I'm really proud of about Sail to Shelter is the work that we're doing to understand the impact of these sails in nature. The sails currently live or die rather in a landfill or in a shipping container, or they are sunk at the bottom of the sea, or they degrade until they're nothing. It's a very sloppy sort of afterlife for them, because there isn't a great solution. North Carolina State Textile Engineering School is, I will know for sure, but we have put together a program for their grad students, which will start in the fall, and they are going to take on Dacron sails for us. And they are going to help us figure out second uses for Dacron, whether that's stuffing, whether it's insulation, whether it's furniture, whatever the thing is that we can do with Dacron sails that will extend the life of that material or add value to the life of that material. At UC Davis, we're working on pressure testing soil and some of these plastics around soil, trying to accelerate time to understand about microplastics and leaching, to understand if there's ways that we can mitigate that, and to understand if using sail material in a farming application is a disaster. I'm not interested in creating a long-term disaster and contributing to the microplastics problem. However, we also have a lot of people who are suddenly without a home and without safety and without shelter. And at some point, we have to balance that between what is the damage to the environment versus what is the immediate need and the acute need of human beings who are in great suffering because the planet is so trash and hot that, right? I mean, this is a balance that we're just going to have to find somewhere in the middle. But in the meantime, I take very seriously the possibility of it being a really bad idea, right? I mean, I want to understand what the impact of this is and what we need to know to mitigate as much damage as possible. University of Rhode Island has a multidisciplinary sort of charrette exercise that we're going to go through in the fall, really taking into consideration, similar to the design charrettes that we've done with co-architects, what kind of circular system can we create with these things and how many uses? I mean, my dream is to also have maker studios in some of our major port cities, that Sail to Shelter would also be a studio where we would deconstruct sails and inventory them and have a way that people could come in and make their own backpacks, make their own bags, that we actually really encourage this whole new idea of upcycling. So it's not just, let's take a bunch of sails and throw them in the wild. It's, let's take this material, let's think of it as as an industrial building material, and let's use it responsibly. There you go. That's Sail to Shelter.
Thank you, Angela Abshier, founder and CEO of Sail to Shelter, for a fascinating presentation. And to our audiences, thanks for joining the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.